Don't take offense easily, but look for the most gracious explanation for the other person's behavior. Ooh. Don't take offense easily, but look for the most gracious explanation for the other person's behavior. This comes from verse 19 where it says, be slow to anger. And here's the deal. Most of us tend to jump to negative assumptions about others. Have you ever noticed that? That you tend to jump to the negative conclusion, the negative assumption. You assign negative motives to, well, I know why they did that. I mean, like, we're just jumping to the negative conclusion. You know, he did that because he doesn't really care about me. Like, you know, you just assign this motive. You come to this negative conclusion. Or she's late because she actually forgot we were going to meet because she doesn't really care about me. I actually had that happen to me this week. Someone wanted to meet, and so I've carved out time out of my schedule. You know, it's supposed to be 2 o'clock. I'm sitting there at the coffee shop, and it's 2:05, it's 2:10, it's 2:15, it's 2:25, and then she finally shows up, and I'm thinking, like, she doesn't even care one whit about my time. And you know, I didn't even ask, like, was there something at home? You know, was there a catastrophe at home? You know, did you get a traffic accident? Like, I'm just assigning, like, negative motives. Not good, right? Like, jumping to these negative conclusions. Maybe it's your husband, you're in there just, have you ever done that thing where you're in the kitchen banging around things? Because you're like kind of ticked off. Have you ever done that? Just kind of loud, shutting doors rather firmly, the dishwasher, oh, you know, everything's, because you're kind of ticked off because he's not helping with the dishes or something. And then, but you're assigning like this negative assumption, like maybe he didn't even hear you ask because maybe the TV was on loud or something, but already you're like, well, he doesn't even care, he's just a jerk, you know, whatever, right? Because we're assigning these negative assumptions and then we take offense. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Instead of jumping to negative conclusions and taking offense, seek to clarify why the person acted the way they did by actually asking them. Isn't that a revelation? Like, actually ask them to clarify the situation. By doing this, you can avoid misunderstandings. You don't give the devil a foothold in the relationship. Ephesians 4, starting verse 26 says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. And often this is what's happening, right? When we have these negative assumptions we're jumping to, we give the devil a foothold. What if we were to actually stop and say, hey, did you hear me ask you to help with the dishes? And, you know, or you know, hey, I noticed you were running a little bit late to our coffee date. You know, what happened? Instead of just jumping to the conclusion, they don't care one bit about my time and what I have going on. But when we ask them to clarify, we have to make it a safe place, right? So instead of doing that accusatory, like, why in the world? You know, that kind of tone of voice. Not that any of you use that tone. What if we just said, like, you know, I really want to understand, or help me understand why, right? Just that nice kind of gentle asking of the question. And instead of taking offense, be the gracious person who speaks kindly and throws water on the flame of growing anger. What if we're just the bigger person sometimes, right? And just douse the flame of anger by being the bigger person and speaking kind and gracious words in that situation where you could take offense. Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Right? So what about just being the bigger person sometimes and saying, you know, I'm just going to give the most gracious explanation in my own head as to why they did what they did, and I'm going to speak kindly in this situation, because when one person continues to speak kindly, it's really hard to have a big, huge, hairy argument. Have you ever noticed that? If you just choose to be that gracious person. Instead of taking offense, decide to speak kind and gracious words that will make people want to be in relationship with you. Proverbs 22:11 says, he who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. Pause before you speak, because the words you say can cause great damage to others and be a poor reflection on the God that you say you follow. Right? Verse 26 says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Yikes, the words we speak are so powerful. They'll either prompt people to scoff at the Christ that we say that we follow, or they'll be intrigued to pursue the Christ that we say that we follow. Proverbs 18:21, familiar verse for most of us, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Here's what I know, we are all Christ's ambassadors. whether you signed up for that or not. If you're a believer and people know you're a believer, you are Christ's ambassador. You're Christ's ambassador at your workplace. You're Christ's ambassador in your own family, in your extended family, in your neighborhood, at your church. You are Christ's ambassador, right? What kind of representative are you? Do you leave a fragrance or an odor? So here's what I'm going to suggest, because we talked about pausing before you speak. When you feel the adrenaline surge, and this usually happens when you're, about ready to, say something you're going to regret. You feel that adrenaline surge. Train yourself to immediately pause before you speak. We all feel that, right? When you're having that interaction that's just, you're about ready to say something, you can feel that little adrenaline spike. That's your cue. That should be your cue. I gotta pause. I gotta walk away for just a moment because I'm probably gonna say something that I regret.